I'm gonna let you in on a little secret today. You do not have to use a real estate agent to buy a home in Illinois. Really, you don't. You may know a neighbor, friend, family member that's thinking about selling and you love their house. You totally could hire an attorney or attorneys or just use a title company to purchase their home. But if you don't know the specific house or the people that own it and truly trust those people, you really should be using a real estate agent from the moment you're even thinking about buying a home. And I'm here to give you a rundown of the process today. Let's just say you want to buy your neighbor's house and they have backyard chickens and you desperately want backyard chickens. So you have the conversation, you decide to go through the process of buying their home, and then in the process, or worse, after, you find out that there are covenants, conditions, and restrictions that run with the land that were put on by the developer or their builder, and they say within those that these certain animals are not allowed on the land, and this can include fowl. What do you do? If this sounds foreign to you, you have to keep watching. I'm Megan Farmer. I'm your Northern Illinois realtor, and I help people buy and sell homes all across Northern Illinois. Plus, I like to give you all the inside scoop on what's happening in Northern Illinois. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. That way you get notified anytime that there's a new video out. So are you ready to buy a home? So you might be looking online a little bit, very casually, seeing if there's anything that maybe you can have a pet at, or, oh my gosh, I really want a fenced in yard for, it can be pet or kids or whatever. Maybe you're just looking for more flexibility in what you can do with your home, especially if you're renting, or maybe you're in a condo or townhome that's very restrictive. If you've been casually looking, maybe you have a little bit of money in the bank, or you have a family member that's willing to help towards a down payment or anything, or you're curious about what home buying programs are out there that maybe potentially offer some free money towards buying a home, then it's time to build your dream team. Definitely connect with a real estate agent first. You need to have a home buying consultation to talk about the home buying process, as well as go over the buyer broker agreement so that you understand what your buyer's agent does and how much they're going to be compensated, and how it can be included in your offer when you're putting in an offer with a seller. Get connected with a mortgage lender. It's time to figure out what your home buying budget looks like and what the potential closing cost amounts are, as well as, of course, seeing if you qualify for any of those home buying programs to see if you can get any money. And this isn't always just for first-time home buyers. Sometimes you could be a repeat home buyer, maybe moving from one primary residence to another primary residence. Let the lender and the agent know what you're expecting to pay monthly so that they can sort of reverse figure out what you're looking to be approved for. So if you say, I want to pay $2,000 a month for a home, we can sort of reverse engineer that. If you think, my range is, $1,800 to $2,200, let them know that, because then you can kind of do a couple different options so that you can really figure out, okay, what home do I want? And this will be kind of a rough estimate of the principal, the interest, the property tax, the property insurance, and then potential private mortgage insurance if you're putting down less than 20%. Hire an attorney. Now, this doesn't always have to be done right away, but you can totally start talking to attorneys about this, because Illinois is an attorney state. The purchase contract for homes that agents use is very restricted in terms of how we can edit it. There's almost no edits that we can do to it. It's very fill in the blank. So an attorney is useful because they can really make the appropriate adjustments to the contract to make sure that you are legally covered. And the out-of-pocket cost for an attorney isn't very much. It's around $500, give or take. Really just depends on the attorney that you choose. Plus, it's usually due at closing, so it's not something that you pay up front. Understanding your budget. Now that you know what your budget roughly is, what is it really made up of? What does it all mean? So if you're purchasing a home using cash, you really just need to know, obviously, the sales price, the property tax amount, any homeowners association costs related to the home you're buying, plus get your estimate of the property insurance. And if you're buying cash, make sure you have that proof of funds ready. It could be a bank statement with all the important stuff, taken off of it, just maybe your name and the amount showing, how much you want to buy for, so that when you do submit offers, you have that with that offer. If you're getting a mortgage, you need to know all that Plus, you also need to know, the interest roughly, as well as private mortgage insurance. Like I said, if you're putting less than 20% down, then you're likely going to have to pay for private mortgage insurance. Property taxes in Illinois are in arrears. So what does this mean? So this means that the 2024 taxes are billed and due in 2025. So if you have a closing date, say January 31st, 2025, as a buyer, you would receive a credit at closing on January 31st, 2025 for all of 2024's potential taxes. If it's not billed yet, it's an estimate using the previous year's actual paid taxes. Plus, you'll get a prorated amount for January of 2025 because the 2024 bill hasn't been out and paid yet. Plus, of course, 2025 won't be billed and payable until 2026. So as a buyer, you get a credit for that tax amount from the seller at closing. So that'll go towards those taxes that you'll pay for when they lived in the home. That's what that means. Private mortgage insurance. When you put down less than 20% towards your home, you'll have to pay some private mortgage insurance monthly. It's in your mortgage payment every month. This amount varies, but all in all, it's not too much. For me and some other, a lot of other people, if it gets you into a home, it's worth it. And once you hit 20% equity, which would include, the money you've put down plus the money you've paid, and then if you want to get it appraised, any potential increase in home value, once it hits 20%, you can request to get that knocked off. So you don't have to pay private mortgage insurance anymore. Or if you just, you have your down payment plus the monthly principal payments that you pay, once it eventually adds up to 22% equity of that value that they've got, it drops off automatically. So it does go away at some point, but you can expect to pay for it for several years. Unless you, like I said, put at least 20% down from the beginning. Property insurance. Obviously, just like as a renter, you get renter's insurance, you need to have property insurance on your home. The lender also requires it, and they're going to require proof. You're typically going to pay all of this through your lender. They'll have an escrow account for your taxes and your insurance and everything like that. You'll get the property insurance quotes that you need once you're under contract with a home. Your lender and agent will remind you. Starting your home search, the must-haves versus the nice-to-haves. So how many beds do you need? How many baths do you need? How, school districts you need to be in. Maybe you don't want to move your kids out of the school that they're in, or specific locations, or really a desired neighborhood, or you need new construction, etc. Go through yourself, write down your must-haves and then your like-to-haves, So I want to remind you too, with things like bedrooms, there are certain requirements for it to be a bedroom in the MLS. So if you're okay with a flex room, like some that use it as an office, if there's not a closet or anything, it may not be counted as a bedroom in the MLS. So there might be a 2-bedroom house that has a flex room. In the description, I might talk about it or have it elsewhere in the description items. If you're okay with something like that, it's good to know, because then it might be a 2-bed search and it might just need some more eyes in the detail to find that additional room. And this really kind of goes along with budget and what you're really looking for. So just note that there are a lot of intricacies when it comes to MLS, and what you're seeing online to you would just look like a 2-bedroom house. So definitely is why it's part of the reason why it's so important to use an agent to look at all those intricate details and to figure out what are you really truly your must-haves versus your want-to-haves. Fence, pool, what's just nice to have. Does it need to be fixed up? Do you want certain things done, already did the home? Does it need to have a coat of paint, or are you happily able to just hire a painter or do it yourself to put a coat of paint on the house? Go through that with yourself or with your partner, whoever you're buying with, whatever, about what's necessary, and definitely send those to your agent. Be sure to look at homes within your budget. And this is why it's so important to know what your budget is ahead of time, because what tends to happen is if you look at homes above your budget, they're going to be of a higher quality typically than what's in your budget. And it's going to be very, very difficult to get that this is the one feeling when you've already been looking at homes that are too expensive for you. probably of nicer quality or a little bit bigger, etc. And this, just that feeling of this is the one is so much harder to obtain when you've been looking at homes that are too nice for your budget. Now, when you're in your budget and you're looking in your budget, you really truly know when you're like seeing the quality and you're seeing the varying in quality, you know, when you're like, wow, this is the one. This is the best house we've seen so far. I want to make an offer. And that is a big difference when you're looking between in your budget and you're kind of willy-nilly looking all over the place. Don't just use home search sites, because there are private listings in our MLS. So people can privately list their homes for sale, and those cannot be found on the public home search sites. So it's important to, let your agent know, I want to see the private listings as well as, see if there's any showings, because sometimes they allow showings, sometimes the private listings don't. But if you can get in sooner, before a lot of the other buyers are potentially seeing that home, you have less competition, quicker to get in. You might be able to get an offer more easily accepted and potentially get some money off that too, off the house, depending on the price and everything. So definitely always keep your eyes open for those private listings and using the MLS search for that. When going to open houses, for me, I like to go to open houses with my buyers, just because if they decide that they really like it and they want to put an offer in, I as an agent want to have been able to look at everything within that house with them so that I know that I'm writing an appropriate and correct offer, because we have to put some of the property, stuff in there, garbage disposal, wine fridge, etc., that may not be in the pictures online. So it's very, very important for the agent to see the home in person as well, versus just telling an agent to write up an offer and it just may not be a correct offer. For showing, some homes only need, 1-2 hour notice, or they're completely vacant and you can kind of get in right away or the next available showing. But some need 1 to 2 days notice. So it's important to keep that in mind and to let your agent know, hey, we'd like to see this house on this day, or are we able to see this house later today or tomorrow? What times are available for the showings? Because the sellers might restrict the times. They might say no showings past 5 or 6 or 7, or only showings on Saturdays. There might be varying degrees of what is allowed for showings based on the seller. When you have a scheduled showing, it will be set for a certain time. So that could be, say it's a 1 p.m. showing, it could be 1 to 1:15, 1 to 1:30, 1 to 1:45. Usually it's limited somewhere between 15 minutes and 45 minutes to an hour, typically. It just depends on how it was set up by the listing agent and what the seller agreed to. And then with that, if you arrive at 12:55 p.m. and you're early, do not start walking the property. Do not try to go up to the door. Wait for your agent to get there. In Illinois, we can get fined. You can get in trouble for trespassing. You're not really allowed on that property until that showing time. So you do not really want to be going up and trying to get into the home or looking outside of the home, walk in the backyard until, it's really your showing time. During the showing, be chill, okay? You need to be calm. Write down all your thoughts. Write them down. I'll give you MLS printout as well as a copy of their disclosures. Write down your notes and say a couple nice comments if you want throughout the home. You never know when there's cameras. They could be, if they're hidden or not. They should disclose if there's cameras, but they may not, or they may not know because their list agent didn't tell them. But either way, you never know when they're looking at them. They shouldn't be, but they could be. So if you really like a home, don't be overly excited, because they might be harder to negotiate with. If they peeped their cameras and saw that you were super excited and saying that this was the one. So just be chill, write down your thoughts, look at everything. Even when you're outside of the home, don't talk about the house, just because cameras outside are super common now, especially the doorbell cameras. So you can either talk at the cars if it's far enough away, or if there's another showing, talk at the next house, or talk on the phone. Talk about it later. As I said, I give you the MLS listing details so you can see all the details that were put in the MLS for the showing house, as well as the disclosures. And so these disclosures can include a property disclosure, a radon disclosure, and potentially a lead paint disclosure. And so what this is the property disclosure says if they know of any issues with the home. This could be foundation or plumbing, electrical, if it's in a flood zone, etc. And they need to note, they're supposed to be honest about these issues and note them. And then radon disclosures, if they know or have any records or anything of radon gas. Lead paint disclosure, if it's built before 1978, they have to say whether or not they know of lead paint in the house. So you get those disclosures typically at the showing. Sometimes if they're not put in the MLS, I have to request them from the agent. But then you kind of know ahead of time, oh, there's a crack in the foundation. There might be water in the basement, or something had an issue at one point, but the sellers said they fixed it. And you can kind of look for that stuff when you're at the showing. Once you find the home that is the one, then it's time to obviously write the offer. So we've got your pre-approval or your proof of funds if you're a cash buyer. You've seen the disclosures of the home. You're prepared to sign off on those. We can do this in person or over Zoom. I can show you, what the offer contract looks like, and we can kind of fill it in as we go along. And you let me know, the sales price, the earnest money. Do you need closing cost concessions? Best closing date. We want to give your lender, if you're using a mortgage, enough time to actually fulfill everything that they need to do to close on time. Taxes. Are you requesting the seller to pay for your buyer's broker agency fee? So there's things that we look at together, as well as, pest inspections, well and septic inspections if you live in a home that's a little more in the country and is on well and septic. And then there's, varying other optional paragraphs for if you need to sell a home. And there's everything that we go through, which we can actually go through at the consultation as well if you request it. So you can get an idea ahead of time of what to expect on these offers. And then once that is all figured out, it's all filled out, I can send it through to you electronically. You initial a bunch of pages, sign the last page. That gets sent off. I print off the MLS sheet, the offer. I have all the disclosures signed by you, as well as your proof of funds or your pre-approval letter. So that gets sent as one big package to the listing agent. And I also call the listing agent when we're writing it. I call the listing agent after to make sure that they've received it. And then I also ask your lender if they can call the listing agent as well. That way they just ahead of time say, yes, this buyer's good, etc. if you're using a mortgage. When it comes to the earnest money shows your good faith deposit towards the house. It's saying, hey, I am a very serious buyer. I really want to buy your home. I intend to get to closing. So it could be, I usually say the minimum's like 1% of the sales price. It's all entirely up to you. But, the more you do, the more serious you look, the better it is for the seller. So if you have, say you want to put down $10,000 on a $200,000 home, $300,000 home, I don't care. $10,000, $5,000, $2,000. It could be $2,000. It all just depends on the situation. Okay, now let's say that your offer has been accepted now. So now begins the contract to close process. So offers accepted, that means all parties have signed the contract and it's official. So say it's signed on a Monday, it starts the next business day. So Tuesday's the first business day of your attorney and inspection review, and you get 5 business days for that. So that's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday. So you get through Monday the following week to get everything taken care of. And this can include your property inspection, which might include a radon inspection or any other inspections you're curious about. If there's like a fireplace or something, you just want to have someone come out and take a peek during that time. Be varying other inspections. Plus, during that time, that's when the attorney is emailed the contract, and then they can review it at that time. And they begin to draft up what their letter is going to be, which typically sometimes it's 1 or 2 letters during the time. We'll just say 1 letter for now. They'll draft up a letter for, once you figure out the inspection items that might need to be fixed or might not, or radon, if radon is elevated, if you're asking for anything, he'll include that. He or she will include that with their letter and send that off to the seller's attorney. Also, during the attorney inspection review period, you'll have your earnest money due typically. Typically, when I advise writing offers, I say, earnest money due within 2 business days or 3 business days or something. And this earnest money amount can be, usually I say, not less than 1% of the sales price. You really want to make it look, like you're serious about buying the house, but the amount is entirely up to you. But it's earnest money that does get deposited right away. It's usually held by the listing brokerage, but can be held by an attorney. But this gets held until closing, and it is still your money. It still goes towards your purchase as the buyer. It's not their money unless something major happens and contingencies weren't covering you, etc. They might try to keep the money if you flake out like super last minute at closing. That can happen sometimes, but most of the time there's the contingencies in place, everything, that you can still get your money back if you do decide to change your mind later in the process. The seller also gets 5 business days. So say the attorney sent the letter out on that Monday, that last day of your attorney and inspection review. Now the seller gets through Tuesday through the following Monday to respond, to get their own quotes depending on what you're asking for, etc. Figure it out themselves, right? How they want to respond. It doesn't always take the full 5 days for each party. Sometimes you literally could go under contract Monday and have an inspection Tuesday or Wednesday. They might put on the radon unit and you might get that back by Friday, and it could be answered by Friday. The timeline just varies depending on what you're doing. So once the sellers responded, if there's any more negotiation that needs to happen there, it can happen there. We'll figure that out. We keep in touch, your attorney, me, keep in touch with you. We discuss with the listing agent, and the attorneys will discuss as well and kind of figure out how to reconcile these. If it can't be reconciled, then you get your earnest money back and you're no longer under contract. Typically what it looks like when you're getting your earnest money back is it looks like you have to sign a mutual cancellation agreement where both parties sign, and then that gets sent to the listing agent, and their brokerage or the attorney, whoever's holding the earnest money, will have to mail out a check to you. So it does have to get mailed back to you. So before closing day though, your lender's got to get that clear to close. They have to rerun your credit, make sure you didn't do anything. You got to make sure throughout the process you don't do anything major with your funds. Don't deposit a large sum of money you can't account for, or take out a bunch of money. Don't, buy a car. Don't get any sort of credit card whatsoever. I don't care if it's a Kohl's credit card, an Amazon credit card for a small purchase. Do not open credit. Do not close credit. Don't even close a credit card that you're like, oh, I paid off. Cool. I'm going to close this. Don't close it. Just leave it $0. Don't do anything hasty with your money during that process, because the lender needs to see that it's been consistent through that whole closing process. So definitely remember that. It's super important, because you could literally not close at closing just because of, opening a credit card or something. So let's say that the attorneys and everyone has agreed and negotiations are done, and this is still happening. So it's possible that if you're using a lender, you've already had an appraisal start the process, but you may not have the appraisal back yet. But the lender is going to be expecting an appraisal back more likely than not. Every now and then they can get an appraisal waiver where, the amount is okay for the home. They suspect that the value is accurate and there's not an appraiser that comes out. But most of the time still an appraiser still comes out. The listing agent meets with the appraiser at the property, and the appraiser will get their report back about a week after they've seen the home, sometimes sooner. And you'll find out, okay, did this appraise at the correct amount? If not, how do we renegotiate this? If it appraised less than the sales amount, does the seller come down? Do you negotiate somewhere in between where you bring a little bit more money to make the sale still go through? Or maybe when you first submitted your offer, you had an appraisal gap addendum and you said that you'd pay up to a certain amount, if it did appraise under, because you were trying to be competitive. That's also an option. There's different varying levels of what happens there. And I'm kind of speaking to just on a conventional loan level right now. If there's an FHA loan or a VA loan, there's going to be certain things that need to be done. The more difficult, inspections and things will need to be fixed before closing. So there's going to be kind of additional efforts there that the buyers may be requesting of the seller's side, depending on the loan type. That is completely just depends on the type of loan. So for right now, I'm kind of just strictly talking conventional loan, what to expect. So then with that, say the appraisal came back and it's at or above the sales price, it continues on further. You are just pretty much waiting to get to the closing at that point. And you're waiting for your lender to give you the clear to close, which can happen, a couple days, several days before closing. You will get some loan documents a few days before closing. And when it comes to the closing day, I like to do a final walkthrough on closing day. So we go see the property, make sure it's all in good condition. You can flush toilets, do whatever you want, make sure everything works before we go. Make sure there's just not major dings on the wall or anything that you're upset about. Then we can go to closing. You can do the night before, but I really like to go the day of closing. Make sure it's still there. You never know what happens overnight, right? Final walkthrough, go to closing. You'll fill out all your mortgage documents, or if you're cash, any of the other documents that you need for the title company, and everything to officially close. And of course, your funds, the lender needs the funds. You need to have your funds at the, title company ahead of time. And once you're done filling out all that paperwork, it seems like you're waiting forever. Then you get the keys for closing, and you can go back to your house, do whatever you need to do that day. I always recommend changing the locks right away, or if it's a quick set, getting a new set of keys and resetting the key on it. Or if they have a nice keypad style, doorknob, resetting the keypads, etc. on everything. Not that anything's going to happen, but I always recommend, hey, maybe just change the locks just in case anyone else that person knew had a key, right? And of course, little stuff throughout the process. And as a buyer's agent, I remind you throughout the process, get the utilities in your name. And I send you the list of all that. I send you that information, whatever the city is, the utilities, make sure internet, TV, I give you those reminders, change of your forwarding address, and making sure I also give you a list of all the major things like 401k and etc. Everything that you might need to think about to update your new address to, especially if you're updating your credit card and everything. And of course, it's a lot. I've been talking for a while, and there's really just a lot to go through, and it might sound confusing, and I can only give you so much information in a little bit of video, and really there's just a lot to buying, which is why I say it is super important to use a real estate agent, because we're used to doing this. We're used to the process. We're used to reminding buyers, whereas buyers, not only are you trying to buy a home, you're trying to figure everything out along the way. Because an attorney, of course, you can just use an attorney. Like I said, if you know a friend or neighbor or someone that you really trust and you're just kind of doing a quick transaction, sure, totally. Just use an attorney. Or you can share the cost of an attorney. You can each have your own attorney if you just want to have a little added protection. Absolutely possible. Just using a title company, absolutely possible. But if you need someone to actually show you homes, and you need to see options, and, you just need help with the entire process, it's very confusing when you're not a real estate agent, absolutely. Just go with a real estate agent, interview a few agents if you need to, but choose someone that has excellent communication, that's always, trying to help you in any questions that you have, figure out any answers, because sometimes the answers aren't always straightforward. Make sure you hire someone who is there for you. With me, after the fact, you don't stop hearing from me. I consider, all my clients for life. So I, continue to send you reminders, of property taxes. Sometimes I have giveaways or events or anything that, I can help you with throughout the time. If you have questions, I need someone for this. I try my best to help all my clients over time so that, we are in touch the next time you're looking to sell or buy, or maybe buy an investment property, so that you know that I am there always for you. If you're thinking about moving to Northern Illinois, absolutely reach out to me, scan the QR code, call me, send me an email, comment on the video. Let's have a buyer consultation so I can walk you through the process, show you what the contracts are, especially if you're not from Illinois and you haven't bought in a while, because everything's changing all the time. So let's walk through that process. And if you want my buyer's guide, absolutely comment buyer's guide. I'm more than happy to send it to you so that you can nonchalantly look at it in your free time without me bugging you. Oh, and about the backyard chicken thing. Yeah, so if you come across, some restrictions on the land that you cannot have, chickens or whatever, and you really wanted to and you're really banking on it, your options would be something along the lines of you can't. And the real estate agent's always going to tell you, you can't. You're not supposed to. Like they say that you're not. This person may not have been caught, so do you risk it? Do you not buy the home anymore? Do you just not have chickens, right? So it's up to you when it comes to that stuff, when you find it out through the process. If you find it out after the fact, that's another story, and you definitely need to contact your attorney if you're very upset about it. So sometimes you figure out that kind of stuff after you bought. You didn't realize, oh my gosh, you couldn't have chickens, and they came and told you that you couldn't. Let me know what you think about that in the comments.